Welcome to the Capital News. I am your host, Alex Karitis. Today is Monday, March 22nd, 2021. Thank you so much for joining me. Hope you all enjoyed your weekend, and happy spring finally here. Really went fast, didn't it? Can't believe it's already the changing of the season. Starting to feel it a little bit here with the weather, which is obviously some nice relief. Title of today's podcast, Nature, Trillions, and Social Unrest. So let's start in order, shall we? Nature. Australia is experiencing some of its worst flooding and rain in 60 years in parts of the country. Last year, we were dealing with outrageous brush fires. This year, we are dealing with some of the worst rain and flooding in 60 years. Then, I'm sure many of you also are aware of the volcanic eruption in Iceland. The first in some 900 years. I mean, with the technology we have today with drones, if you haven't seen some of this footage, it's quite remarkable, especially what's the footage at night. It's beautiful. Nature is obviously very powerful and very, very beautiful, but it's just one thing after the next. The hits just keep on coming. If it isn't something man-made, if it isn't something from the government or a central bank or a military somewhere, it's nature. The hits just keep on coming. This year is most definitely setting up to be just as crazy as last year, if not more so. We're just getting underway here. Which takes us to our trillions mention, because Joe Biden supposedly now has another plan. God help us. Another plan. And this one is supposed to have a price tag, at least early rumors, or that it's supposed to be around $3 trillion. Hey, why not? Pick a number out of the hat. $3 trillion seems pretty good, doesn't it? I told you these idiots, these jokers, were just getting warmed up. I've been saying this since last year. 1.9 trillion was nothing. It's a walk in the park. That was easy. Now they want to push something for $3 trillion, and they're going to get it. They're going to get some form of it. Whether it has the total price tag of $3 trillion, that of course remains to be seen. But even if they only got 50% of that, it's $1.5 trillion. And it's just another $1.5 trillion or another $2 trillion or another $3 trillion that we do not have. So we're going to borrow it, we're going to print it, we're going to beg for it. And it's not going to do much of anything. And supposedly, this is supposed to start incorporating some of the Green New Deal. So, quote-unquote, green investments, whatever that means. So the government's obviously going to get buddy-buddy and pick a lot of winners on this one, and probably some losers, too. And then it's finally supposed to tackle infrastructure, whatever that means, because we've been told about infrastructure for, past couple of decades, and nothing gets done of any significance whatsoever. You have bullet trains and some of the best airports and other infrastructure taking place in Asia. But here in the United States of America, where we're supposed to set the standard, where we're supposed to be the wealthiest nation on the planet, where we're supposed to be the gold standard on pretty much everything, we are a major laggard and a major loser. So where is all of this money going? Because if we were to spend what we have spent in addition to what we already appropriate or what we already collect through taxation, which is about $3.5 trillion, and don't forget, we're on track to spend $8 trillion this year, which is going to give us a multi-trillion-dollar deficit once again. And I don't know how much of this they're going to pass this year and how much they'll start spending this year, or if they're going to spend this over the course of a few years. But nonetheless, we don't have the money. Which just begs the question again, why are we paying taxes? Because clearly deficits don't seem to matter, because there doesn't seem to be any type of constraint, at least not yet. Now, the market may have its say in that in the not too distant future. That may be what we have been witnessing globally, not just here in the U.S., but with global yields on global sovereign debt. And that's why you have central banks starting to panic, starting to talk about yield curve control, or starting to step up to the plate a little bit more aggressively to start buying back a larger number of bonds, a greater number of bonds, faster than what was originally anticipated. Because they're nervous, because they're trapped, because there's nothing else they can do except tell a story and hope that we're all all good little boys and girls who just buy into the narrative that they have everything under control. They don't. They don't. But that's it. But everybody is so bent on having their account go up. They're so conditioned on central banks being there to support the markets if they should slip in the slightest, to come in and start buying more bonds, or depending on the central bank, maybe actually going in and buying equities outright or ETFs. That we've become conditioned. And we just think, oh, well, they've saved us before, they're going to save us again. And it worked, and it worked, and it worked, and it worked. And they have been doing this since the great financial crisis. So we have been on this ridiculous experiment for the past 12, 13 years. And it continues to work. And that's the ultimate question. When does it stop working? Now, we saw a glimpse of that in the fourth quarter of 2018. But they quickly reversed course. And because the market acted like good little boys and girls, this ridiculousness continues marching forward. And it's funny because you'll come across some articles in the financial media where some people are saying, well, with the recent increase in government yields, obviously putting some downward pressure on some of the tech stocks, so some of that bringing the broader markets down with it, because what leads up tends to lead down. But you have some people saying, well, this is kind of extended, so we might actually see a reversal and yields might start to pause. They might actually go back down, which of course can happen. Of course it can happen. Whether naturally or whether it's manipulated by central bank policy. Nothing goes straight up, nothing goes straight down. But the funny thing about what some of these pundits are saying, and some of them are people I actually like and listen to on occasion, are saying that that's going to be a relief for the market. What are you talking about, man? What type of relief for the market? Markets are at or near all-time highs. We had a little correction. That's supposed to be standard natural behavior of markets. Everybody is hypnotized. Everybody is basically conditioned. If the markets should fall 1%, 2%, 3%, 5%, God forbid, over a period of time, well, the dam's broken. Everything's breaking loose. And now there's going to be relief. We are at or near all-time highs on prices and on valuations, one metric after the next. And these, to me, are dangerously high valuations. And I'm not just saying that because I want to say it. I'm saying it because that's what history tells me and suggests to me. Because when you go back and look at when these valuations were at these levels or near them, it didn't end well. 1929, 1937, the Nifty 50 in the 1970s, dot-com boom and bust, housing crisis, and now. This is virtually the everything bubble, with a couple of exceptions, in my opinion. And we know, because of what we experienced in the fourth quarter of 2018, and maybe know is too strong of a word, but maybe highly suggest that it's going to take lower yields and a lower federal funds rate to prick this bubble. You have a Federal Reserve that is out of control, an ECB, an European Central Bank, that is out of control, Bank of Japan, all of them. Balance sheets going through the roof. The system is much more fragile today than it was in the fourth quarter of 2018. And that's when we were told that the economy was great, the best it ever was. Of course, that wasn't true. But that was the narrative. And a lot of people bought into it. And when you spend and when you have trillion-dollar deficits before COVID-19, you can mask over a lot of problems. You can make things look good today. I mean, after all, that's the whole purpose of debt, isn't it? To steal future growth and prosperity and bring it forward to today. That's the whole purpose. Make things look better today. Because we do not have a long-term view in this country. or many parts of the West, if you will, Western civilization. It's all about political expediency. It's all about the next election cycle. And when we run our economy based off of political careers, well, what do you think is going to happen? How is that going to end well for the vast majority of people? It might end well for the politicians who get elected and reelected and reelected again and reelected and reelected again. Oh, and reelected again and reelected again. What could possibly go wrong? I mean, this is why we need term limits, to say the least. That is not going to be a panacea, but it's a start to solving a lot of our problems. Because right now, it's not about solving problems, it's about getting reelected. This is why you have to leave the two-party system, because they're not about solving problems. They're about kicking back tons of money, billions and trillions of dollars, to their donors, to their lobbyists, to their business partners. I mean, Bloomberg just reported today that some $4 trillion has gone to the top 1% over the past year. $4 trillion. We talk about the numbers of what we're spending here. I mean, if we're going to spend $8 trillion this year, and we basically did the same last year, the top 1% got half of it. Do the math for how many people get the rest of it. It's the sit down, shut up money. If people actually understood the numbers, if they understood what was actually going on, I think there would be some protests in the streets right now, and rightly so. Putting these politicians and bureaucrats and central bankers on notice. But no, that's not happening because they were clever enough to give the masses some scraps. Feed them bread, give them circuses. Bread and circuses. The old Roman adage. Bellies full, eyes and ears entertained. And you will be able to put people into a zombie state. And boy, do the American people fall for it hook, line, and sinker. That's all it is. It is sit down and shut up money. I will never be convinced otherwise. And of course, it's a pass-through bailout too. Because these politicians and bureaucrats were smart enough to understand that if they simply just bailed out major businesses, like they did during the great financial crisis, that people would be taking to the streets. People would be upset. That you probably would, in this time, have a merger of the Tea Party and Occupy Wall Street. But where's the Tea Party? I mean, my God, if they thought Obama was bad and everything that was happening there with what government was spending, where are they now? And if Occupy Wall Street thought Wall Street was bad a decade ago, where are they now? Wall Street is even bigger, more powerful, more interconnected with the global economy, getting even bigger bailouts, not just directly from the government, but through you, because you're getting your sit down and shut up money. But you take that money and you go and you give the money to a bank, a credit card company, somebody who's financing something that you are trying to own or lease. I mean, what don't you understand? To me, this is as plain as day. But people are so caught up, as long as they get some money in their pocket, as long as their stock account is going up, that's all that matters. That's all that matters. It doesn't care at what expense. The expense, of course, is the country. The loss of our soul here in this country, the loss of our principles, the loss of our humanity. Because if we're going to spend $8 trillion, don't you think we should have something to show for it? Should we have as many people on unemployment? Should we have so many people structurally unemployed and underemployed? Should we have so many people who are going bankrupt due to a health condition? Should we have so many people in food bank lines? Should we have people around the world dying of starvation or of diseases that we have therapies, cures, or vaccines for? I mean, come on, connect the dots here. Connect the dots. But people just don't understand what's going on. People don't understand how big $8 trillion is. And this is 1 year, and we're going to do it again. Okay, we tried to have, we did do some podcasts where we were putting everything into perspective as to how much money this is, how it would rank as a standalone economy. And it would be the third largest economy on the planet. United States, China, and what we have just spent. And that's even just the above and beyond what we bring in through taxation. You add it all up, you add the $8 trillion into it, and that's, yeah, most definitely the third highest. And you're coming up pretty close behind China, by the way. And if we had something to show for it, I would at least say, well, we have something to show for it, but we don't, which makes it that much worse. And of course, these problems aren't just going to be felt here in the United States, because the inflation, what they are doing, expanding the money supply, it can go everywhere, and it does, and it is, and we are witnessing this, like we talked about last week. And we focused on Nigeria and Lebanon, and we mentioned Brazil. Especially Brazil. I mean, Lebanon, as bad as everything is going on over there, it is a small country. It is a small economy. Doesn't mean it cannot create a ripple effect. It most definitely is and will continue to do so, but it is a smaller piece in the economic chain. Brazil, on the other hand, is a top economy, about a $1.8, $1.9 trillion economy by GDP. Which, of course, is what we just spent on Nobody Cares Act 3.0. Again, putting it into perspective, and something that should make you shake your head and laugh or cry, whatever you want to do. That was as big as Brazil. Okay? And Brazil just started to increase their interest rates because they are having to contend with high rates of inflation as well. They are not a stable environment, politically speaking, or economically speaking, and therefore not socially speaking as well. So that's something to be very mindful of, what takes place in Brazil over the coming months. And then, of course, the other news that we have is with respect to Turkey. Because Turkey, you got President Erdogan over there, who fired their central banker because they have runaway inflation, and their central bank was trying to get a handle on it and increased interest rates, God forbid, fired the guy, and you have the Turkish stock market suffering the worst day in 8 years. And the Turkish lira, their currency, weakened more than 9 percentage points today. Now, the Turkish lira, of course, is not one of the major cross-currency pairs, but it's not small potatoes either. Turkey is top 20 economy by GDP, 700 and some odd $billion by GDP every year. I should say over the past couple of years. And of course, Turkey is very well positioned geographically and geopolitically speaking, because you have the European Union and the United States of America trying to rub shoulders with Erdogan, trying to be buddy-buddy, trying to curry favor with him, get him to side with the West. And you obviously have Russia, who is probing around in Turkey too, trying to get his attention, Erdogan's attention, to build an alliance with Russia. And I'm sure the Chinese are involved as well. So this is not small potatoes. We are moving up or down the chain, however you want to put it, with bigger economies, larger countries starting to become infected with this monetary disease. There's already the political disease with the rot and the corruption and the nepotism and the mismanagement. And it's going to obviously spill over to some sort of social unrest in time. To me, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Over 9% drop in the Turkish lira. I mean, we talk about market performance. We talk about a brief overview of the foreign exchange markets, the currency markets. And I try to remind this audience all the time. If you see a drop of 0.5%, I'm drawing attention to it because that's a big move. If it's 1%, it's obviously an even bigger move. This is 9% in one day. And the stock market basically being put into a correction, by definition almost 10%, in one day. This is what happens when societies start to unravel. And when a country such as Turkey has this type of geographical importance, well, all eyes and ears better be paying attention, because this could get out of hand very quickly. Okay? And we also have other instability that continues throughout the Middle East. You have Saudi Arabia responding to the recent attacks on their oil facilities against the Houthi rebels in Yemen, which of course is one of the worst humanitarian crises in the world right now, what's taking place in Yemen. You have some protests taking place over the weekend in the UK, some protests taking place in Israel against Prime Minister Netanyahu. You know, we continue to see a lot of strongmen characters, obviously Putin, Netanyahu, Erdogan. These guys aren't going away. I mean, they will eventually, obviously. But they're here to stay, because there's no guarantee that even if there is some sort of social uprising, protest, revolutions, whatever, or even just outright fair elections, it doesn't mean that the new boss isn't going to be the same as the old boss. There's no guarantee here. So this all, to me, is just getting started. As much as we witnessed in 2019, that was the appetizer. As we make our way through this year and further, I just think it's going to get worse. I hope that's not the case, but when you have these types of actions, when you see how markets react, what do you expect people to do? Just sit there and take it? I don't think that's going to be the case. There's always a breaking point, and I imagine it's coming in most of these economies. And then sort of, that still keeps us with, that's a combination of today's title of trillions in social unrest. Because this is all seeded through all of this monetary mayhem. And what else is causing bigger problems is you have overheated housing markets. And one such example is in New Zealand, where you now have authorities and regulators in New Zealand trying to calm the housing market down, because it is on fire over there. It is out of control. Prices just going through the roof. Well, all of this money has to go somewhere, doesn't it? And maybe everybody's trying to flock to New Zealand because it's an island far, far away, and this is Armageddon, and everybody's trying to find safe harbor somewhere, and they think it's New Zealand. I don't know. But I did hear a reporter on Bloomberg who's out there in New Zealand, out there in their offices out there, who's familiar with the landscape, and is mentioning how there are some small towns, nothing fancy. These are not gated communities. These are not the elite. These are not the top 1% of the people, if you will. It's just an average town, average village, and you have median home prices at $500,000 US. This is ridiculous, okay? And the regulators, obviously, and the government of New Zealand is finally waking up to this and say, we got to do something about this to sort of, tamper this down, because this is getting out of control. Of course it is. This is a direct result of monetary and fiscal shenanigans. What do you think is going to happen? This money is going to find its way into financial assets. It's that simple. Why do you think the top 1% in this country, the United States, added $4 trillion to their net worths? Because the money has to go somewhere. You have U.S. existing home sales at a 6-month low. And we have the median existing home price increasing by 15.8% year over year to now stand at $313,000. I'll repeat this. The median existing home price increased by 15.8% year over year to now stand at $313,000, while the supply of homes fell by 29.5% year over year, the most on record, and now stands at 1.03 million units. We are pricing people out of the market. Period. End. The only thing that gives any of these people some saving grace is perhaps they can lock in a 30-year mortgage at an extremely low rate. But that's it. But on the flip side of this, ladies and gentlemen, the reason why these housing prices are so high is because we have interest rates that are so low. There is no free lunch. You get it. This is not that difficult to understand. But when you understand that the government's in charge of the education system, and people don't understand math, and people don't understand finance or economics, well, then I guess it makes sense. $313,000 is the median home price, an increase of 15.8% year over year. But, say it with me, there's no inflation. That's what they would have us believe, because they think, well, if we can keep saying this every single day, and every time we go out onto the airwaves, well, maybe these people they'll believe it. Doesn't matter what they actually experience when they go buy a car or a house or to the grocery store, or we have to go to the doctor's office or the hospital, or you got to go to the pharmacy and buy some drugs. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. There's no inflation. Want to go educate yourself, to retool, to get yourself, to market yourself better once this thing turns around? No. There's no inflation. Don't pay any attention to this stuff. We will tell you what economic data to pay attention to. We're trying to build a narrative, don't you understand? We don't like the official unemployment rate at 6.2%, so we're going to tell you it's closer to 10, just because we got to fit the narrative. But we also want inflation to be low. So we'll discredit the BLS and their official statistic of 6.2% for the unemployment rate. But we'll say that the BLS is correct when they tell us that, there's no inflation, that it's below 2%. They want to have everything both ways. This is the evidence in our face that they are done. You understand? They're cooked. They're trapped. All they have left is the BS that spews constantly from their mouths in the hope that the markets buy it hook, line, and sinker. Because once the markets say enough's enough, that's most definitely it. When that time comes is anybody's guess, but what it'll look like is global yields increasing, which is what we have been witnessing. And what we'll really know is if those yields continue to climb higher, despite efforts that are undertaken by one central bank after the next, and one federal government after the next in attempts to suppress those yields. Because when we have $28 trillion in a national debt here, just the slightest of increases in our borrowing costs is that much more tragic to the financial health and even the national security of this country. Because any type of growth that we have, any type of taxation that we have and the taxes that we bring in, a larger share of that is going to have to go towards our debt service, as opposed to any type of investment into this country, which of course is really not the job of the government, but that's where we are. So it'll just be even fewer dollars going towards something that could be productive because we have so much debt. But this is because we choose political expediency. We choose short-term gains. We choose short-term smoke and mirrors, a mirage of making things look better today at the expense of the future. Well, the future is here. It's here, and we got to pay. And we got to pay. And the saddest thing of all, it's being put on younger generations and future generations that yet to exist, that have absolutely nothing or very little to do with this. Yet they're the ones that have to pay the ultimate price. Fewer opportunities, higher costs of living, lower living standards. But make sure you go out and vote. Make sure you go out and vote. Because it's those Republicans. They screw everything up. Oh, it's those Democrats. They screw everything up. No, it's all of them. How much more evidence do you need to see? What building needs to collapse in order for you to understand this? What market needs to collapse in order for you to see this? What needs to happen before you wake up and leave these parties and realize what's going on right under your nose? And it's been going on. It ain't like this just happened in 2020 under COVID-19. Oh, no. This is just the great reveal of how much they do not care about you. It's all a joke. It's all a joke. I just checked my website. Tomorrow is going to be the 1-year anniversary of my letter, Representation and Recourse, predicting all of this nonsense. How they were going to use COVID-19 to justify all of these shenanigans, all of this deficit spending, all of this money printing. $8 trillion last year wasn't enough. They're going to do another $8 trillion this year. I mean, why not, right? If you can get away with it. I mean, if you could print $8 trillion and get away with it, you probably would too. And that's exactly what they're doing. So there's a lot to pay attention to here. Nature, because you don't know what she's going to give us. Trillions of dollars coming. We know that for a fact. And social unrest, that's a safe bet. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Nature, trillions, and social unrest. Catch you back here tomorrow. Stay diversified, stay vigilant, and stay with the Capital News. I am Alex Commodities. Godspeed.